brute force. If it doesn't work, you're just not using enough. You're listening to SOFREP Radio, special operations military news, and straight talk with the guys in the community.
Hey, what's going on? This is Rad, your host for SOFREP Radio, and I have a really awesome episode today. As always, I have to talk about the merch store. So let's go check out sofrep.com/merch store and go check out the latest from Brandon Webb and the guys behind the scenes who are making cool branded merch like SOFREP shirts. And we love being tagged in those pictures on the internet, so keep it up. The other thing that we love talking about, and if you're new to the program, welcome, but that's our book club. And we have sofrep.com/book-club. And you can go in there and just peruse the library of books that have been put together by the operators behind the scenes here at SOFREP for you, so you can enjoy it. And if you've already been a part of the book club, continue reading books and using that gym for your mind, which is a book. Now today, we have a very distinguished guest, I should say, okay? Many titles from, American patriot to general to secretary to probably father and son. We have former retired Major General William M. Katz, also current secretary at the American Battle Monuments Commission on the show. Welcome.
No, it's nice to be here. I'm not currently the secretary, though. I'm the former secretary.
Former secretary. Yeah. Distinguished. Okay, excuse me. Former secretary. We're cool with it. Okay. I'm going to read. I'm going to drop your bio. We're going to read this here, okay? And then get to know you a little bit and then just go from there. All right? Is that cool with you, William?
That's fine.
Major General William M. Katz, U.S. Army retired, was a secretary of ABMC appointed by President Donald Trump in January 2018. Matz is a highly decorated combat veteran with a distinguished military career spanning 5 decades. As an infantryman, he served in Korea and Panama, and as a company commander with the 9th Division in Vietnam, where he was wounded in action in the 1968 Tet Offense. He served in the 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions and was executive secretary to 2 secretaries of defense, Caspar Weinberger and Frank Carlucci. Matz served 2 years with the Navy Marine Corps amphibious forces in the Pacific during a second tour in Vietnam, and deployed with the 7th Infantry Division to Panama during Operation Just Cause in 1989. Upon retirement from the Army, Matz worked for Raytheon Company as Vice President, Army Programs, followed by General Manager of Vinyl Northrop Grumman's Saudi Arabian National Guard Modernization Program in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. President George W. Bush appointed him to the Veterans Disability Benefits Commission. He is also past president of the National Association for Uniformed Services. He is on the Eisenhower Institute National Advisory Council and a member of the Board of Directors of the American Armed Forces Mutual Aid Association. He received a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Political Science from Gettysburg College and a Master's degree in Political Science from the University of San Diego. He is also a graduate of Harvard University's Senior Executives in Government Management course. His military service awards and decorations include the Distinguished Service Cross, Defense Distinguished Service Medal, Silver Star, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star for Valor, Purple Heart, and the Combat Infantry Badge. Matz was born in Drexel, Pennsylvania. He and his wife, Linda, reside in Great Falls, Virginia, and are the parents of 3 children. Welcome again to the show, sir.
Well, thank you. It's nice to be with you, Rad.
Yes, and Daniel said, "Hey, Rad, I've got someone that would like to be on your show. Let's get him on." And here we are.
Yeah, well, Rad, you mentioned about the many titles.
Yes.
The best title I ever had was Grandpa.
Grandpa, another title, right? See, there's another title.
Yeah, I've got seven grandsons.
7 grandsons. Wow, they've got some lineage to look up to there, don't they?
Yeah. Well, that's one reason, Rad, I sat down and actually wrote the book. I was penning out notes to leave to my grandsons.
Oh, yeah.
As sort of a written legacy. I had wished my dad had done that for me as a World War II vet, but he left all too early and he didn't do it. So when I left the Trump administration, I told my wife this is a good time to start to write out something and leave to the grandsons and the kids. So anyway, that's how I got there. I got one grandson, Rad, that still thinks I fought in the Civil War.
Because you fought in so many.
Yeah. So I thought I'd better leave him a written legacy.
You're classic. That's great, you know. And where did you come up with the title of your book?
I came up with that because really, as you can see in my book, it's really a soldier's lifelong struggle with polio. It's overcoming polio as a young child. So, my toughest battle, Rad, has been overcoming paralysis as a young boy, and then coping with and fighting with the after effects of polio my entire life as an infantryman in the Army, which really wasn't easy.
No.
So I titled the book "My Toughest Battle."
You know, when I went into the Air Force as a young man, they made me drink some polio as the vaccination just to make sure that I had that.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, that was the liquid vaccination then.
Yeah, I got that, you know. I mean, and so you had to overcome it, just like some great presidents had to overcome it as well.
Yes, yes. No, you're exactly right. I was stricken with polio as a young boy. I wasn't quite 6 years old in 1944, living outside of Philadelphia with my mother and my sister. My dad was in the Pacific, overseas in the war, and I came down with polio one day. I couldn't get up and walk. I fell down. I tried to get up again and fell down. They took me to the hospital, gave me a spinal tap, and diagnosed me with poliomyelitis. Another name for polio, Rad, is, and I say this because this generation living today, thank God, they haven't had to deal with polio.
Right.
They don't know much about it, but it was also called infantile paralysis.
That's right.
And my leg was paralyzed. My right leg was paralyzed from hip to toe. And the doctor said at that time that I would never be able to walk again without the use of a crutch or a brace. So obviously, as the story goes, I proved them wrong.
Yeah, you did. Airborne.
Had a lot of wonderful medical help, and it was my father when he came home from the war, the service. Got out of the service at Christmas. What was it? Christmas Eve, 1945. He didn't want that crutch or that brace anywhere around. One day he told me, he said, "Bill, you take that crutch and brace, you throw it under the bed. I don't want to see it again. I don't want you to be a cripple." And of course, my mother was very upset. She said the doctor said he needed it, etc. But a couple of days of arguing why he wanted a brace went under the bed, that was probably a seminal moment for me in my recovery, because it did get me up and having to push and walk, falling many times, but getting up on my own 2 feet. I just tell that because that's part of the story in the book.
No, it's amazing, right? Because you've gone on to get into the military. So here you are as a young man with polio, right? Okay. And then what was your favorite sport that you liked to be a part of? Were you a scout growing up as a young man and, dealing with this? Were you trying to be in Boy Scouts? And, how did you get to the run phase?
Yeah, well, you could recall your days as a young boy. Young boys want to do everything. You want to keep up with your friends. And I had a very difficult time doing that. Once I was released from the hospital,
yeah.
I was still on an outpatient protocol, but I tried to keep up with them. My one leg was atrophied. So to this day, I wear a size 12 on my left foot and a size 9 on my right foot. I had a permanent limp, but all the time, my anterior horn cells, which are destroyed by the polio virus, they were starting to grow and reinvigorate as I grew as a boy. But it was tough. I mean, I couldn't ride a two-wheeler when all my buddies were. I was still on a three-wheeler. Can you imagine that?
Yeah, no, it's right.
So they would make fun of me, Rad, and laugh and so forth. I would fall down every once in a while, trip, but I'd get back up. Fall down and get back up. I wanted to be with them, and I wanted to play football in grade school. So
I think you're getting a call.
Yeah. So I worked real hard to make the football team in our junior high school football team. So that's a partial answer to your question on what sport that I want to do. But I just wanted to push myself and make sure I could do everything a normal boy would do.
I get that from you. That's why I was asking that question. It's because you've gone on to do those things. You've gone on to exceed that. I already know, with just your titles right? I mean, let's talk about the general, right? You had to get in the military. And being in the military, you had to do PT and physical training against everybody who didn't deal with the polio. Well, not everybody. Some people probably had to deal with polio in their life like you did, right? You know, and get through. And so, I mean, you had to run.
Yeah.
Did you have to, I mean, what was your enlistment like? Because it's Korea, right? Are you enlisting in Korea?
No. I went through Army ROTC at Gettysburg College.
Right.
I was commissioned a second lieutenant through the college. And when you filled out the questionnaire to go into ROTC, well, one of the disqualifiers was polio. And of course, I had to check that. I had to be honest. And
Right.
to get into the program, though, they sent a neurosurgeon up from Walter Reed Army Medical Hospital in D.C. to give me a final examination, et cetera. And he reluctantly passed me. Had he failed me, my life would have been different. So it's just a series of how there's a little bit of luck in everybody's life. So I got into the ROTC program. I managed to play lacrosse in Gettysburg College. I had a lot of wonderful coaches and mentors that pushed me and helped me along. And I think having that polio as a young man and just driving myself and not wanting to be a cripple, not wanting to be in braces or a wheelchair, gave me that grit and that perseverance and that personality that I have today, that I'm not going to quit. I'm going to make it. I'm going to get through. And so that's what got me through some very difficult times in the Army, as you can imagine. I went into airborne school. I went into Ranger training. I had a very difficult time in Ranger training. If it wasn't for one of my Ranger buddies, I probably wouldn't have gotten through that. But
why? What was the difficulty for you?
Ranger training, Rad, is the toughest training the Army has. It's a 9.5 week course. The last phase of the course, and I describe all this in my book, My Toughest Battle.
Yes.
I tripped on a. We were on a night reconnaissance mission on Santa Rosa Island in the Florida phase of Ranger training, and I tripped and really had a difficult time getting up. So this big Ranger buddy of mine, Paul Stanley, picked me up, put me over his shoulders, and carried me through the rest of that course. Had I not made that last phase, why, I may not have gotten the Ranger tab. It's another simple example there of somebody helping me, but also I think of my ability and wanting to get through it.
Yeah, and just to push yourself through, just to say you can do it. I feel that just comes right out of you as a young man. You're just like, to lose something and then to regain it, you just want to run with it.
Well, you're exactly right, Rad. Yeah.
Yes, I 100% am inspired by that, and I think that people going out to get your book or checking that out would also find a lot of the same kind of goosebumps. Really, you're giving me goosebumps.
Yeah, well,
just how cool it is because you push through.
Yeah, and I also elected to go into the infantry. I don't know how familiar you are with the Army, but there's about 18 branches within the Army itself. So I could have taken an easier track. I could have gone into one of the combat support or combat service support units, but I chose the infantry, which is the tip of the spear. They're the guys on the ground that win the last 100 yards of any fight. So I went in the infantry. I was an infantry officer all my life, and in that role, while you're out with infantry units, companies, battalions, brigades, they do PT every morning. I went and did it with them, and it was very, very painful on some mornings, because a lot of times those young enlisted soldiers, they wanted to outrun the old man,
Of course. Well, it's a PIR, right? It's like a parachute infantry regiment, right? You guys are like airborne. You guys are always keeping your legs have to be toned. My dad was a Green Beret.
Oh,
and
was he? Okay.
Yeah. And so his legs look like really horse racing legs, like a horse, just nice and tapered and just like bam. But that was Dad. And now I'm trying to chase that in my 40s. I'm like going to the gym every day, boxing, doing flutter kicks, and just trying to push myself to get those same type of I know Dad had it. I'm like, I can get there. Come on.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting you say that, Rad, because a good bit of my my career in the Army was with the airborne units, the 82nd and 101st Airborne units. I mean, I wanted to prove myself that I could do everything the West Point officer could do. I could do
Right.
everything everybody else did. So I kept pushing myself, wanting to get into the elite units, and that took a toll on my leg over the years.
Yeah, and going through Rangers and just so much running, and then just winding up in this, the All-American AA, the 82nd Airborne?
The 82nd Airborne Division, right. The All-American, and the Screaming Eagles is the 101st. So I had multiple tours.
Were you brigade commander over the 82nd at one point, or is it a division? How did your command over in 82nd work? How did that work?
Yeah, well, first of all, in the 101st Airborne Division, I was a battalion commander.
Okay.
And you have about 600, 650 men under you there. In the 82nd, I actually had two tours. I started out there as a young lieutenant back in '62, and went through the Cuban Missile Crisis with them, and some very interesting events that happened during the Cold War. And then I came back to the 82nd in 1980, and I was the G3, or the operations officer of the 82nd. So boy, that really kept me busy, kept me running, and a lot of parachute jumping, a lot of exercises, operations, and so forth.
How many theaters did you jump into? Theaters of operation that you?
Yeah, how many different theaters?
Did you get the stars on your jump wings? Do you have different stars?
No. I don't have any stars on my jump wings. I am a master jumper, though.
Right, so you have the main star on the top of it.
Yes, I got the main star. Right. I'm a master jumper. But no, I jumped into the deserts of Egypt on a Bright Star operation back in 1981, 82.
Static line all the way, dude.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it was quite an operation. So, but with a atrophied leg and a bad leg, you're constantly you're constantly protecting it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So jumping out of an airplane is easy. It's the landing that's tough, right?
Knees together, right? That's what.
Knees together and toes on the ground. But I always, it's funny how you compensate when you have a weak member of your body.
Right.
So I was very careful always to try and not land on that right leg at all, and I always favored that, and so the left leg took all the beating and so forth.
So you kind of had a different kind of gait when you walked as well. Is that what I'm understanding, or did you?
Yeah, I did. No, your understanding is right. I always had a limp, and of course, when I was a young boy growing up and having this atrophied leg, which is thinner than the other and the foot shorter than the other, and I had drop foot, I always disguised that limp. I was ashamed of it. I didn't want other people to know that I had that.
Right.
So it was a difficult time for me growing up and getting through. And a lot of people that I have been friends with all my life, they never really realized I had polio until I wrote my book and they start reading about it. I mean, that's how I was sort of able to disguise it and get through life.
Yeah, and I'm sure some shininess on your shoulders made everybody look kind of face forward. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, maybe.
My eyes are up here.
Yes.
Right here.
Right. They weren't looking at my feet. Right.
Yeah. They should be looking at your straight ahead at the shininess, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I just see shiny. That's great. And so you achieved the rank, for my listener that may not be familiar, of Major General. And if I may, that's 2 stars. Is that correct?
That's a 2-star, right.
That first star.
Yeah.
Wow.
2-star general is the rank I achieved before I retired from the Army in September of 1995. So, yeah.
Just after Black Hawk Down, Operation Gothic Serpent, and 93 was in that time frame, and just after all of the 95. So you've served under multiple presidents.
Yes, I did. Right.
And you always seem to transition with the different presidents that were coming in with you as an officer. And, do you mind giving a little feedback on what your mental toughness is about, maintaining your bearing when there's a transition of presidencies in this modern day?
Yeah, well, as I say, I served on active duty from what was it, 1962 to 1995. As you know, Arad, that was the ultimate period of the Cold War.
Sure was.
So I went through a lot of operations and exercises as a young lieutenant. The 82nd was alerted to go down to Cuba when Khrushchev put those missiles in Cuba. I'll tell you, we were all set to go. That was 13 very tough days there in October 62. We were all set to go. They broke out ammunition at Plainside. They sent some airborne units to forward air bases down in Florida. We were ready to fly in and jump in. I can remember to this day the drop zone I was going to jump into, move north, cross the Almendares River, link up with the Marines that were coming across the beach. But thank God we never had to do that, as you know. Kennedy, the young President Kennedy, backed Khrushchev off and he pulled the missiles out. So that was one major event that I was involved in. And then I was also involved in, of course, the Vietnam War. Vietnam
Yeah.
War was the big one. I was a rifle company commander in the Mekong Delta in the Ninth Infantry Division, 67, 68. The period 67, 68, Rad, was probably the toughest ground fighting that took place in Vietnam was during those 2 years. They were the 2 years I was there. I went through the Tet Offensive in January 68 and then came home in November 68. Then I was also involved when I was with the 7th Infantry Division in 1989. You may remember Operation Just Cause.
Is that in
That was the U.S. invasion of Panama.
Yes,
We went down and got Noriega.
that's right.
Yeah, he was threatening Americans down there, and his PDF, Panamanian Defense Force, uh, really one day killed one of the Americans down there, and that's sort of what precipitated uh, the first President Bush to launch that operation. If you'll recall, during that operation, the chairman of Joint Chiefs was Colin Powell, and so I was with the 7th Infantry Division at that time, stationed at Fort Ord. We got the alert. It was 3 or 4 days before Christmas, 1989, that we were going down. And we got 8 infantry battalions down there. The Air Force did a tremendous job bringing the aircraft in. And we flew out of 2 departure airfields, Travis Air Force Base and Monterey.
Out of California.
Yeah, civilian base in California. And we got our infantry down there very quickly. They joined up with the paratroopers that had jumped in. And Rad, that was one of the best operations I think the Army in recent years, all services, executed. It was well planned, well executed, and we took down the PDF very quickly and eventually captured Noriega, sent him in handcuffs back to the states, and we reinvigorated the Panamanian government, and the story goes from there.
Exactly.
So that was quite an operation that I was involved in. Yeah.
I think I have a friend who was involved in that operation. Maybe I could say his name, Nightingale.
Yes.
Colonel,
Yeah. Is it?
Colonel Nightingale.
Yeah. Colonel. Is he? Is it Keith Nightingale?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same, yeah.
I don't think I've ever met him, but he and I are sort of about the same year group.
Sure. Yeah,
And he
because I had
writes
him on the show. Sure.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
got. We
Yeah.
talked.
I know he writes a lot of books and all. So please tell him I said hello.
I will. And so it's just cool to hear your perspective of it, and the way that you're approaching it, just so deliberate, direct, just concise about the situation, and and he was like, he's a part of all of that South America stuff going on in Panama, and you guys have just, you remind me of my dad. I'm not gonna lie, okay? Right? He was in Vietnam, Green Beret, and nothing but love for you. And I don't know if you've ever been welcomed home officially from Nam, but let me be someone to say welcome home from there. Okay,
Yeah.
so welcome back.
Well, I appreciate. There's a lot of stories, Rad, about the troops from Vietnam not being properly welcomed home.
Yeah.
And actually, I hate to use the word, but being spit on and things like that. When I came home from my first tour in Vietnam, I didn't experience any of that. I mean, I got off the airplane in Philadelphia. My family was there to meet me. I had a young wife, and our son was I forget, he was like maybe 12, 13 months old at the time. Uh, but we were very well received by the people there in Philadelphia in 1968, November '68, when I got off that airplane. But things started to turn really bad then in the '60s, as you know. And
Yeah.
during the latter part of the Vietnam War, I mean, it got bad. And yeah, a lot of our troops, they received very unpleasant welcomings, I guess, when they got back, and even after they were back.
You know, I've had my experience with some veterans from Vietnam who have talked about that same exact thing, what you just said. And some have said, hey, you know, I didn't experience it, but friends did in different demographics of the country.
Yes,
So
yeah,
more in the cities, it was more, you know, but in the Midwest where he was from, he didn't really receive any, pushback during that time. But, you know, in today's modern media, it's just everything's so quick. We just are like, if we're not seeing the war as a civilian, is it even happening? You know, and in Vietnam, it took maybe 2 weeks to get the article of the ambush that went wrong or went right to the States. You know, the
yeah,
reporters would have to, truck it, get it back, send their papers. Fax machines weren't really a thing, and computers and cell phones. What? You
yeah.
were using starlight, to try to use night vision in Vietnam, trying to use billows to capture the light. It's nothing like today's modern technology of PVS 14s where it's just like, you're just like right into green eye mode. I mean, so much technology has, come and put itself into the military. And one of my veterans that I was talking to just the other day, he said, well, in Vietnam, Rad, they did try to drop ground sensors, into the bush to try to, get movement of enemy movement in there. So they were trying to use technology back in that time frame, and I guess to just bring that full circle with the news media coming back to telling the people on TV, the stuff quicker, faster, that's worse. And so that probably, the 60s, 69, 70, 71, at that time when everybody's like, trying to say in the war, they were getting faster and faster media brought to them, I think is what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
For,
You're absolutely right there, Adam. I mean, there were no cell phones, there were no
no.
computers, uh, and but you did have the Walter Cronkites of the world and the news media who got their cameras there and then brought it right back and threw it into the living rooms of every American. And
Right.
they did it in such a way as to sort of turn America against the Vietnam War. Yet our soldiers over there were fighting their ass off, doing a damn good job. Believe me, I was there.
I know you were. And to see that Korea and Vietnam were to help thwart communism from, seeping itself is really good versus evil. The situation was just still, the 38th parallel in Korea, where they decided, if I understand that correctly, is like a circle over the area of a longitude latitude that dictates the South and the North Korea,
Yeah,
demilitarized zone, right? The 38th parallel. And so, that's still going on today. These guys are still stuck in North Korea's never conceded, right?
no, 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 that's right. And a chapter of my book that we sort of skipped over, Brad. Before I went to Vietnam and after the 82nd, the Army sent me to Korea for a year. This was 1995, and I was assigned right up on the DMZ. It's called the Demilitarized Zone. It's 151 miles across Korea. The north side is you've got the North Koreans, and the south side you got the South Koreans. And I was right up there on the DMZ, and our mission at that time. This is even before Vietnam really started to really seriously escalate. But our mission at that time was to capture or kill North Koreans who were infiltrating South. They were tunneling under or coming through the wire, etc. So that was quite an experience for me as a young officer.
How old were you doing that? How old?
How
How old
old
young?
was I? I was probably 24, 25 years old.
Probably a first lieutenant?
I was a first lieutenant, and actually, I was promoted to captain during my tour over there.
Oh, wow.
I was in the first cav up in the DMZ. It was a great experience for a young officer who was still not quite sure he was going to make the Army a career. But yeah, we lived with live ammunition, grenades at our bunk every night. I mean, it was a real live mission. It opened my eyes. And then I came back and went to infantry officer advanced course at Benning, and then over to Vietnam.
What do you think about the current situation there, where they are digging the roads out around the? Did you hear about this in the media, or in the international news, where they started digging out the roads and like taking the roads away from the DMZ in the north? Is that?
Is this in Korea, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't seen that. No, I haven't read that one.
Yeah, they're like bulldozing the roads so that no one can drive on them. North Korea is bulldozing like their own roads.
I see. Okay.
Within the DMZ area, like so that no one can even.
Yeah. Well, get back to your point, we still theoretically, as you know, we are at war with North Korea, the South Korea,
Right.
Because there was never a treaty.
Nope.
There was only an armistice. So we have signed an armistice. And that armistice was across the 38th parallel. The South Koreans face the North Koreans every day, and we still have about 30,000 American troops over there in Korea.
Right now, right? Just training.
Yeah, just as we talk. Well, they're actually training, but they actually have operational duties too. I think our troops still have part of the DMZ that they're responsible for in terms of surveillance and anti-infiltration operations.
Holding it down.
Yeah, exactly.
Like what you were doing.
Exactly. And in fact, I guess you would say they'd be a tripwire if anything happened there.
But yeah, then if it goes off, they're the first line that's going to go off, and then everything goes from there.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
No,
if it's going to be so guerrilla style or something coming through the wire there, I mean, I can only imagine the battles in Korea, the feet and everything from all our soldiers. Today we have at least boots that have better insulation.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, some of the coldest nights I ever spent was up there in the DMZ in Korea. Oh boy.
Cold.
Yeah.
Cold.
Yeah. Back to the Korean War, 50 through 53. Talk to the Marines and the Army guys who fought there. The elements, the winter was as bad as fighting the Chinese communists and the North Koreans.
Right. It was like I think we got involved in 45 to 50, and then in 50 to 53 is when we got action in Korea.
Yeah.
Right. And I think armistice was signed in 53.
Yeah, July 53, exactly.
Yeah, right. See, it's not talked enough. There's not enough about that, There's not enough like movies put out there about Korea, We have all the other conflicts, but a lot of folks forget that, a lot of our troops like yourself went over there to, protect them from communism yet again. So that's why I asked how many times have you jumped into a different theater, right? Because you've been in Korea, you've been in, Vietnam, you've been in Panama. It's like, I was just curious about that for my own self at the beginning of our conversation.
Yeah. Well, they're the theaters that I operated in. Yeah, exactly.
And did you got your combat infantry badge?
I got my combat infantryman badge after 30 days in combat in Vietnam.
In Vietnam?
Yeah, the requirement back then, when we were fighting in Vietnam, as I recall, you had to have 30 days combat time in Vietnam, and you had to be in an infantry unit at the time. So, yeah, that's where I got my CIB.
Dang, 30 days. It's like, you probably could get action on day one.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, Rad. Yeah, that's exactly right. Look at your smile. I love that smile. There's so much going on there.
Yeah. Those 30 days, you're just so busy. My units, I was in the field almost the entire time in the Mekong Delta, trying to flush out the enemy, meet the VC. Those days went by pretty quickly, though.
Yeah, but that's your constant. You were just constant. You were just and is it can you just give me a little bit of insight? Is it more rice field warfare that you were dealing with, like rice paddies and trench foot, or was it jungle warfare with trench foot?
No, Rod, I was in the Delta, which is south of Vietnam all the way to the tip of the southern part of Vietnam. And that's what they call the Mekong Delta, one of the world's biggest rice producing areas, and it's laced with rivers and canals and things like that. It's all rice paddies. So we were almost every day we were trudging through at least a foot, foot and a half, maybe 2 feet of water. If you got up on the dikes, the dry land dikes, the VC would booby trap them. You'd lose a soldier, you know. So you were constantly on search and destroy operations, moving out based on intel they gave you to try and flush out and find the VC. But you were constantly at water. Uh, your second enemy there were terrible fungal and dermatology diseases that our troops picked up there. In fact, I write about it in the book again. I got one that was diagnosed, and it took years to actually finally get rid of it. So that if you got it too bad, you couldn't stay out too long. You had to get back and dry out. That's the only way you could take care of it. Uh, but we had a lot of soldiers often on sick call because of these dermatology diseases that went up their legs as a result of being in that filthy, putrid Delta water.
Right, and not being acclimated to it.
Yeah, yeah, and you weren't. I mean, we were white skinned, black skinned guys. Weren't acclimated like the leathery skin of
Viet Cong.
the local inhabitants who
Yeah,
lived there.
exactly.
They knew how to handle it. They were immune to those kind of things,
I mean, they'd wear sandals 90,
and they wore
99% of the
sandals,
time.
which
Yeah,
aired the feet out. We couldn't wear sandals. We were in combat boots. So
right.
the Delta was very tough. I'll tell you, it was very tough on an infantryman. Not only were you fighting the enemy, the VC, and not only were they trying to kill you, but you were fighting the terrible elements of the Delta, the putrid waters and
Right. And
the
you're
leeches, the leeches that would get up into your skin, and you have to either burn them out the next night or dig them out a little bit. Uh, yeah, so Delta was tough.
Delta was tough.
It was
Why,
tough. It was not friendly, and it was roaring hot too down there.
why do I just envision like mortar fire in the water hitting and all that kind of combat is what you had to go through? Yeah, I'd
Yeah, well,
imagine.
I'll tell you, we fought mainly main force VC units. They were well armed with Chinese communists and Russia weapons and ammunition. They were indigenous to the area. They operated in sampans at night, and they could move at night. They were wiry, tough, uh, battle hardened troops that we had to fight and dig out. It was not easy. In other words, they were a tough enemy. I learned to respect them, as did my men early on. And
Right.
they booby trapped the hell out of everything. They knew the American soldiers' weaknesses. They knew we couldn't operate in that delta too long. Eventually, you'd get up and walk on a road or the hard stand or a dike. So they booby trapped all that. As soon as you did that, you lost a soldier or two.
And then that just affects the whole entire element that's moving along in that area to have to fix a casualty, take care of somebody that just got wounded. So they're trying to take the whole platoon that's moving out of the line, out of the fight.
Well,
With
you're
wounding
exactly
and
right. You're exactly right. When you get a wounded man like that, you have to stop operations and bring in medevacs.
right. And then they're like waiting for that,
Yeah.
and then they're waiting for a yellow smoke to be called out so they can throw a yellow smoke.
Yep. No, no, no. You got it. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yep, yep. It's wild. So were you wearing solid green ODs, olive drab ODs? Was that your uniform? What I'm thinking?
Yeah, yeah. It was solid. It was solid drab, a very light fabric because of the heat and the water. And then we wore the Delta combat boot, which was more porous than the others. Uh, to allow the air to get in and out as much as possible. Of course, the water
Some
that always
drainage
got in and
holes.
out. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and we didn't travel with heavy rucks. We didn't need to. We had a small Delta pack. We mostly just carried ammunition, uh, as much ammunition as you could, and many canteens of water,
Yep.
and also as many pouches of first aid uh, equipment, things like that is what we carried. We didn't have the heavy rucks. At night, they would bring in your food, mortar ammunition, things like that. So we had to travel light because just trudging through that delta and that mud. It was a sucking mud. You can just imagine. And that was
Law
stuff
rockets.
leg.
You were using law rockets, right? And the whole kit and caboodle. I mean, whatever you could. What was your main weapon? Was it an XM177 carbine? What were you using?
Well, no, our main weapon was the M16. And I carried the AR-15 as a rifle company commander. I was a captain at the time. The troops had an M6. Then we had the M60 machine gun.
Yep.
And we had the M49 grenade launcher. And we also carried with us on operations a crew-served 90-millimeter rocket launcher, which was shoulder fired. And each platoon had at least one of them. And that was a 2 or 3 man team that would take turns carrying that. That weapon came in handy often, blowing up bunkers and things like that. And then at night, they would bring in heavier weapons. As you set up your perimeter at night, they bring the mortars in, you'd set them up, base plates, tubes, 81 millimeter mortars. And occasionally, if we had the fields of fire, they'd bring in a 50 caliber machine gun, which you could set up on a tripod. But they came in at night with the helicopters, bringing your chow and things like that. That's essentially how we operated. Sometimes they couldn't get those choppers in, so you just went into a perimeter defense out there, pretty much naked with what you had.
That's what I was just going to say, because I'm listening to what you're saying, and you're basically just creating these quick fobs here and there, just setting up a perimeter, and then they're flying in, and then you're just setting up a perimeter around where you guys are at, a defensive perimeter. And like you said, if they can't fly in, then it's just you guys with the ammo that you took and the canteens of water, because you can't drink the muck that your friends in.
Yeah. No, that's right. And they gave you pills to disinfect the water, but hey, let me tell you, those pills didn't work. And we were not going to drink the water where it just didn't work. So water was very key and essential. Ammunition, obviously. Key. And then having enough medical wraps to stop the bleeding when a soldier, the soldiers,
morphine probably, gauze, chest packs,
those kind of things.
Those types of things is what you guys would be carrying, because you're seriously just going up against the enemy, right? And man, like, tunnels have to just been something you weren't prepared for either, right? There's a lot of tunnels in that area?
As I say, it was mostly...
Maybe it's low-lying, huh?
But the villages, the towns and villages were all along these estuaries and canals and the Mekong River and the Bassac River, which flowed into it. So there was some hard stand where that was. That's where the villages, were, et cetera. And they did dig some tunnels down in there where they could. And that was another whole operation. When you came across a village where there were tunnels, then you got your guys who were tunnel rats. These were usually my Puerto Rican soldiers, young, not real big framed, wiry, and they would get out in the tunnels with a flashlight and a pistol and some concussion grenades and flush out what was down there.
That's incredible. Just the spirit of a human being to go into the unknown of an abyss of a tunnel.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't fit down one, I would.
Right. Well, I'm 6'4", 270. I in the military, 230. I'm not the tunnel guy.
Yeah, no, you're right. But I had some good tunnel rats, and believe me, and walking point, and going down into the tunnels are the two most difficult jobs an infantryman had in the Delta.
Man, why the point? Why do you think walking point? Don't you get to see it first?
Well, walking point, you're the first one out there. And you got anywhere from 140 to 150 men in platoon formations behind you, spreading out. The point guy is the first element up the trail or on the dike, etc., and he's going to trip the wire. The enemy's going to see him first, shoot at him first, so he's very vulnerable.
Yeah, very vulnerable. And then also he's got everybody behind him that he's worrying about returning fire over him So he is basically just maybe even laying down flat trying to return fire.
Well, that's another point. You're exactly right. You had to be careful then, not to hit your own men sometimes when you're in a firefight.
You have to
Yeah.
try not to do that. Like I understand it.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Well, I mean, you really tried terribly hard not to do that, and just like you try not to hit the civilian population, the innocent civilians.
right.
But war, Rob, is terrible. I mean, battle on ground battle, infantry battle is terrible. I mean, there's always going to be some fratricide. There's always going to be some innocent people who are wounded or killed in any
Casualties of
battle.
war.
And believe me, it happened in Vietnam too.
It did. It's not like that's the goal. It's just that how do you start differentiating when, you go into a village and there's hooches everywhere and it's just the consistency and you're like, you don't have to wear just a black pajama to be identified. It could be right. And they could take off their uniform and blend in just like a native. And you'd be like,
Yep. Yep.
and if you don't speak the language, they got you. It's like if they came here.
No, you're absolutely right. It was an irregular war we fought in Vietnam. And U.S. Army was not prepared to fight that war in the 1960s. We got better at it as time went on, but it's tough. Now, I had some Chu Hois with me. I read about this in the book. Chu Hois were Vietnamese who defected from the VC or the North Vietnamese, and they came over, were captured by the Americans or the South Vietnamese, and they were sent to a schooling of about 8 or 9 weeks. And they actually turned, and then they joined U.S. units or South Vietnamese units. I had 3 or 4, we called them Chu Hois, which means open arms, come over to us. It was quite a great program they had there. Marines had them up north, we had them in the south. And they were a big help to you because they knew the area, and they could tell you when you picked up or captured a few women, whether or not they were trustworthy, whether or not they were VC, or whether or not they were actually friendly. So you used them an awful lot. They were a real force multiplier for me, even down at my level.
Oh yeah, because they would just tell you right away. They would know. They just know.
Yeah. And they believe me. They hated the North Vietnamese and the VC. They saw what they did to their families. They saw what they did. They knew they were the communists, and
Right.
we paid them. They were actually on the American payrolls, and most infantry units in the Army had Chu Hois with them, at least in the Delta.
That's incredible. I hadn't heard about the Chu Hois, in that respect, but it makes total sense because they're also being, brutally killed in the war, and seeing their families die, even by the hands of their own countrymen. And so they're like, no, I'm over this. I'm not gonna. Communism is not for me. I'm not cool with this. So
that's right. And I've got a photo. One of the photos in my book is me with a couple of my Chu Hois there.
That's so cool. I mean, it's just so cool that you're telling us about it. We're just going to capture this, so it's out there. So as you mentioned, one of your kids can maybe hit play, and be like, what did Dad say to this guy on this podcast? What are we listening to right now? Did he just call him dude? Isn't he a sir, a secretary?
Yeah, well. Yeah.
Man.
Brad, it's an excellent podcast. I feel very comfortable, and so do you. We're discussing back and forth, yet you're learning, and the facts are getting out for your radio audience.
Yeah, and it's just the best way for me to go, right? I want to get to know you like my listener or viewer wants to get to know you, and this is exactly it. Your stories are so genuine and captivating, the way that you present them, and I know there's so much that goes on in here. I know you've been privy to so much in your life, and that you're taking things with you like my father took with him, no matter how much I pestered him.
Yeah.
Dad. He's like, some things just go with me. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
So, on behalf of being a selfless person yourself, and just doing all these things for the nation, you just seem, to persevere when someone says, you can't. You're like, no, I can.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's inspiring about your book. And you have every right to call it My Toughest Battle. And the fact that your toughest battle was just getting away from polio to prove that you could do anything you want, and that it's all just a matter, it seems like, of mind is what you're saying. You just have to put one foot literally in front of the other and chase your dream or your life, right?
Yeah. And, I'm glad you said that, Rad, for your viewers too, and for me, because, my publisher, Casemate, they were looking at maybe different titles for me, et cetera, but I selected the title and I hung with it and kept with it the entire time. And it does ring, it does ring true. This has been my toughest battle. And of course, I'm suffering with what they call post-polio syndrome now. And am being treated at the National Rehabilitation Hospital in Washington, D.C. for polio patients. These are kids like myself in the 40s, 50s, and 60s who had polio and have survived it and are still living. Many of us are being diagnosed with what they call post-polio syndrome, where after all these years, your anterior horn cells start to disintegrate again, and your leg gets weaker and weaker. So I've got to wear a brace and use a cane right now. But it really is amazing what I was able to do in the Army all those years before this hit me. And I'm not complaining, believe me, because some of my troops have a couple of their legs off, so I'm not complaining about it. But but that is all part of what went into my title. It's been my toughest battle, fighting these debilitating effects of polio.
Yeah, you just did, and I think that's what probably gives your soldiers the confidence to follow you into battle, is because they probably picked up on some of these things. Maybe you didn't talk about it. Maybe you just kept moving on and no one needed to know anything about your personal history with your medical condition. Yeah. But people can pick up on things, and there's probably people chattering, and they're just like, you know what? If he can do it, I can do it. Yeah. And if he's going to go, I'm going to go.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I mean, no, I never talked about it, right? I never talked about having polio. I mean, my father wanted to hide it from day one, and even when I was in the locker room changing, when I was on the football or lacrosse teams, I always tried to hide that right leg because people could see it was a little thinner, you know what I mean? But you're right. The soldiers, the men are smart. Some people could pick up on it. A lot of people picked up on my limp. I'd be walking along, and they'd say, "Hey, sir, you got a little bit of a limp there," I didn't even answer. I would just,
eyes are up here, right here, right?
Yeah. And so, and I always had a special boot and a special lift in my boot, but they didn't see that, and it's just one of those things.
Maybe it's just your inner determination and just your overall. You are in the life you're supposed to lead. How about that?
Yeah. Well, Rad, I'll tell you, the life you live is the life that you make for yourself,
That's right.
And I wrote an afterword in my book. I don't know if you've seen that. It's just a 2-page afterword where I wanted to, for the reader, I wanted to compare the years that I grew up to what America is like today. When I grew up, when your dad grew up, Brad, there were no safe spaces to run to.
No.
Nobody lowered the bar. Nobody felt sorry for you. People worked with you, helped you, tested you, mentored you, but you were on your own. And I'm glad I was brought up that way. I had a tough German father, and I mean, he was there for me when I needed him, but he didn't baby me. He didn't coddle me like you see today, particularly in our academic institutions. It was just a different world. I mean, I grew up at a time when you were accountable for things.
Yeah.
You screwed up. You got your hand slapped. You got your ass kicked, or you were thrown in jail for 3 or 4 days. So you were accountable. I also grew up in a meritocracy. You were tested, I mean, I got where I was, I guess, because either I failed the test or I didn't fail the test. So I grew up in a time of accountability and meritocracy. Hopefully, Rad, that we're seeing some of this come back today in America. but
Well,
totally different time when I grew up.
I got a friend that's a recruiter, and he said that he seems to be talking to kids still, and they're still he thinks that the people that he's enlisting are battle ready. And we've had that conversation, because there's a lot of this speculation that like our people aren't, physically fit or capable. But no, I feel that he's doing the right thing to enlist these young men and women, and making sure that they're capable. And as long as we have these career counselors out there in the military who are talking to the youth and just making sure that they're able to go and talk to them and say, hey, you interested in the Marine Corps? You interested in the Army? You want to see what you can do? You like skydiving? Things like that. It's just, give them a talk to, because, they are a career counselor. And now, as I learned with like blended retirement these days, there's options in the military that people have to enlist in. It's, that's why I kind of brought up, how did you transition from like one president who was, say, Republican through another president who came in as a Democrat, and you still maintained yourself without politicizing, the military, right? And so,
yeah. As you're a soldier there, going through the ranks, major, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, colonel, up to general officer, Rob, you don't get involved in the politics. You know that, I mean, each one was my commander in chief, whether it was Bush, Obama, Reagan, Trump, Clinton,
right.
whoever. I was down at a lower grade. I mean, I never got too involved with them, except where I did work a little bit closer in some organizations where I did get a little bit closer, say, to the White House. During the Reagan administration, as you cited in my bio, I was the executive secretary to the Secretary of Defense, Caspar, Weinberger, and Frank Carlucci in the late 80s. That was a period of time when America was rebuilding from those terrible Carter years, when he gave away the Panama Canal, when he sort of demolished the military services. We had to rebuild from those 4 years. And so that was a very interesting time working for Carlucci and Weinberger, two great men. I had great respect for him. Weinberger had been an infantryman in World War II in the Pacific. And you didn't really, as I say again, as a career officer, you didn't get involved in the politics. Some administrations, I would say, probably were more fun to work in than others. You know what I mean?
Sure, you can say that. That's fair.
Yeah.
You can have that, Maybe there was a pizza party more than the other. But, I respect that. I respect that you put the U.S. first in front of your name, U.S. Army, U.S. Marines, U.S. Navy, U.S. Air Force, all of the men and women who serve currently with the U.S. in front of their name tape. They took on the U.S. oath, and I'm grateful for that, 100%.
That's good. Yeah,
I just want you to know. So positive.
That's interesting. You said you talked to your friend who was a military career counselor, right?
That's what they like to go by. Yes.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it sounds like he's got a good attitude. That there are some great young Americans out there. Some
that's right.
Young 17, 18, 20-year-old kids today that are fit and can serve in the military, because you only get your news from what they broadcast.
Right.
A lot of it, they say 60 or 70% of today's youth are not fit to serve in the military. Well, that really bothers me as an American, because it wasn't that way when I grew up.
Right.
I hope that's not true,
Right. And when I'm talking to these guys, they come into my, I talk to them. I really do, sir. And it's like, they seem to just say, not us. And I'm like, okay, cool. Well, as long as I'm hearing it from you guys and, friends with them. And if you're someone out there that's thinking about joining and, you listen to this conversation, which is not regular media. I am a radio podcast jock. Okay. And we are talking and having a normal conversation. And I talk to these people like you. And I can say, hey, I talked to you the other day and this is what you had to say about Vietnam, And so it's just, it could be a small world, and it could be a good world if we all just, stop evil men from doing bad things and not just standing by idle.
Yeah.
And so I guess the youth need to step up on that as well, and just know that it's on your shoulders.
Yeah. Well, it's good that in your podcast and your radio shows like this, you bring these things out for your listeners. You know.
Yeah, I do, and I just want to hear real takes. We all hear the straight gut shot. What was it like taking your first shot at somebody, or what was it like doing this or that? But it's different to actually just have a casual conversation with someone whom you've never met. Show that you don't have to get at each other's throats in this day and age, and you can gracefully say, "It's been great to see you today.
Yeah.
Have a nice day."
Yeah.
And that's what we just did.
Yeah.
Right? And I blame my parents. I blame my parents for raising me that way.
Where were you raised, Rod?
I was raised here in Salt Lake City, just outside Hill Air Force Base. So my dad was with the 19th Special Forces Group here at Camp Williams.
Oh yeah, I know Hill Air Force Base real well. Yeah.
Yeah. So through the 80s, so I transitioned with him when I was 7. I moved. He was already here in 81, and then we came in 83 to Utah from California. So I was born in Cali. So I'm a California kid. Yeah. I was transplanted to Utah. I'm the California they fear here. California moved here, from 83, bro.
Well, I'll tell you right now, keep having these veterans like myself.
Thank you.
On and listening to their stories and asking them the right questions like you're doing. That's great.
Well, thank you so much, and I just want to say that it's been a privilege to talk with you and to get to know you, and your 6 boys and your kids and your grandkids and their grandkids, just like your grandpa and his grandpa. Somebody had to fight to get you here today, to get them here today. It's just some type of a lineage that we all have in our bloodline. We're not here by chance. We're here because somebody fought to make sure that we could be here. So we have to continue to just be the best stewards of what we have at our disposal in our lives. And that's what I am, is just a steward of what I'm available with around me. That's what I can do the best with. So I hope that my listener enjoyed this show. I hope that they go out and pick up My Toughest Battle, written by General William Matz. Legitimately.
And Rod, you can get that on Amazon real quick, or you can buy it at a Barnes and Noble store.
If you get it on the Big River, leave a review for the General, because that helps. Leave a review where you buy your book. All right. If you're going to 100%. And I've had your time for an hour. You still seem vibrant, as if you're ready to just get right back into the Mekong. I don't think you want to.
Hey, Rod, I got my cane right here, ready to go.
I always want to go visit Vietnam, just so I can say that back in Nam. I just want I want to go there today, just to go visit, check it out, see the beach, have a beach party in Vietnam, just so I can say back in Nam when I was at the beach. Okay. A lot of respect for you, and a lot of respect for everything that you had to go through and everything that you had to lead. And I'm not going to cry. I'm just going to have chills and goosebumps. No, and I want my list. Yeah, dude. Yeah, no, it's real. It's real. I know. Okay. It was just, you gave us just a tip of the snowflake of the iceberg of what you dealt with. And My Toughest Battle talks about it more. So go check out My Toughest Battle, written by my new friend, Bill Matz. So thank you so much for being on the show.
No, thank you, Rod. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And again, check out the merch store and check out the book club, which is sofrep.com/book-club. And my name is Rad, on behalf of Bill, saying peace.
Yeah.
You've been listening to SOFREP Radio.